a long black cloak, a wide-brimmed hat, a mask with a beak like a bird. The image is unforgettable. The plague doctor. To us, they look terrifying. To their patients, they were supposed to be saviors. But here's the truth. Plague doctors weren't healers. Most weren't even doctors. And almost none of them saved anyone. This is the story of Europe's most chilling medical fraud. This is Hidden by Time. That bird-like beak, one of history's most haunting images, wasn't just for show. It first appeared in the 17th century France, designed by Charles Delorme, physician to King Louis XIII. He believed that the curved beak, stuffed with herbs, spices, or vinegar-soaked cloth, would purify the air before it reached the lungs. The doctors who wore it subscribed to the miasma theory, the belief that disease spread through poisonous air, clouds of corruption rising from the sick and the dead. The rest of the outfit matched the logic. Heavy waxed robes that could be wiped clean of infection, leather gloves to keep the body covered, glass lenses over the eyes, and the staff, a long cane, used not for dignity, but for distance. With it, they could prod patients, move clothing, even drive off desperate families without ever laying a hand. The sight was unforgettable. In woodcuts, paintings, and pamphlets, the beaked doctor became a symbol of the plague itself, a walking omen, a reminder that the sickness had arrived. Yet behind the mask, there was no miracle. The plague doctor was less healer, more bureaucrats. Cities hired them under contract, often desperate for anyone willing to take the role. Many were not physicians at all, but barber surgeons, failed medics, or opportunists who saw a chance to profit from fear. Some were young apprentices, others too poor or disreputable to find other work. Their job wasn't to cure, it was to document. They recorded the number of sick and dead. They listed wills, inheritances, and debts for the dying. They performed autopsies, not to save lives, but to study how bodies rotted. Contracts from Venice, Florence, and Perugia make this clear. The plague doctor was required to count, to register, to witness. Healing was rarely even mentioned. They were usually paid a flat salary, sometimes with room and board, sometimes with protection from taxes. In Marseille, plague doctors were even promised access to wine and servants. But the payment was often given up front, which meant the doctor had little incentive to risk his life treating the dying. The truth, most never tried. For ordinary people, the sight of the mask was a living nightmare. In Florence, in 1630, one chronicler wrote that children screamed and women fainted when the plague doctors appeared. Their arrival was like the toll of a bell, a sign that death had entered the street. They offered little comfort. Their cures were purges, bloodletting, fumigation with smoke, remedies that weakened patients instead of saving them. And some doctors turned predator. During the 1720 plague outbreak in Marseille, rumors spread of plague doctors taking bribes to falsify causes of death. Families paid them to say a loved one had died of fever, not plague, desperate to avoid quarantine. Others were accused of stealing valuables from the sick, or demanding money for treatments they knew would fail. The figure in the beaked mask was not a savior. He was a vulture. Why did plague doctors fail so completely? Because no one in medieval or early modern Europe understood the plague itself. The Black Death of 1347 to 1351 killed between 75 and 200 million people, an apocalypse that swept from Asia to Europe. Whole towns vanished, families starved or burned their homes to escape infection. And yet the disease never left. Outbreaks returned every few decades. The Great Plague of London in 1665 killed almost 100,000 people, nearly 15% of the city. In Prague, Vienna, and Amsterdam, entire neighborhoods were erased. Faced with this terror, doctors clung to old theories. Poisonous air, imbalanced humors, the wrath of God. They carried pomanders of herbs, burned sulfur, cut into veins. The real cause, the bacterium Yersinia pestis, spread by fleas carried on rats, would not be discovered until the late 19th century. Every mask, every robe, every ritual was theatre. A desperate attempt to impose order on a disaster no one could understand. So what was it like to be a plague doctor? In some cities, they lived in isolation, housed in special quarters, forbidden from mixing with ordinary citizens. In others, they were despised, accused of spreading the plague instead of curing it. One Venetian account describes townsfolk throwing stones at doctors in the streets. Another from France records that servants refused to carry food to them, fearing contamination. Many plague doctors died quickly. Contracts sometimes included a clause for widows, guaranteeing a pension in case the doctor never returned. Others fled when the work grew too dangerous, abandoning their patients and breaking their contracts. Some were hunted down, dragged back by officials, and forced to work under guard. Behind the mask was not a man of confidence and knowledge. Behind the mask was fear. Ironically, plague doctors became more powerful in death than in life. Artists seized their image. In Italian carnival, the beaked mask turned grotesque, part comedy, part horror. Satirical plays mocked them as bumbling quacks. Engravings spread across Europe, showing them surrounded by corpses, a mix of healer and carrion bird. The real men were forgotten, but their costume endured. By the 18th century, plague doctors had mostly vanished. Quarantine, sanitation, and later, germ theory replaced superstition with science. But the mask remained. Today, it is one of history's most terrifying symbols. A reminder not of medicine, but of helplessness. The plague doctor stands in our imagination as a figure of horror. But to those who lived through the Black Death and its aftermath, he was something worse. A fraud. A reminder that even the wisest had no cure. A sign that death was already at the door. So next time you see the mask, remember, it wasn't the costume of a savior. It was the uniform of despair. This was hidden by time. If you found this story chilling, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our other videos uncovering the dark corners of history that the world tried to forget. Because the past doesn't just haunt us, it waits.